So now, just when I thought of a way to catch a break, I learned that Ronald McDonald Trump is stealing credit for bills that Mr. Obama signed in in 2014. 6 years, 6 years, 6 years. Of course. You know what I think part of the problem is these inaugurations where they put their hands on the Bible. That's your first clue. Uh, Why are you wanting to say in the please, but just believe that you're inbred. Believe the whole species is inbred, and just treasure it. It's the image of God. You know, I'm a third times stepchild caught in the external world. There are things I actually could have felt and done in certain step family quote paradigms that I didn't because of my personal sense of discipline. Um, so what I think happens is, you know, there are insults back and forward, and they end up saying, "Oh, go fuck yourself." But you know, when they're putting their hands on the Bible, it's probably not a. It's like redemption. You know, it's like, you know, well, Jesus hasn't returned yet, so uh, try and avoid apples and just remember all that hardcore porn incest. Mm. So go fuck yourself becomes confusing because it's supposed to be pejorative, and Trump walks off thinking that you're complimenting him, but he's too busy to have a further discussion. So thank you for the compliment. Uh, hmm. I admired Christopher Hitchens' wise address to, and this is the thing: this slavery hadn't been abolished when it was yet it was recognized that the separation of church and state was essential to a flourishing society. So you see America starting to sprout out of it, but it just hasn't attacked it hard enough. Uh, because it's stupid. It's like trying to say 1 plus 1 equals 1 in a maths classroom. The logistics of the fucking Holy Bible. Um, it's stupid. It's stupid, and it's why in this country we only see the Queen's fucking face embossed on uh, fucking hell. And what would the why? And she gets the $5 bill, you know, which is actually the lowest in monetary value. But she does, however, have 5 fingers with which she can fuck herself in the garden. So it probably makes more dollars, I mean, sense to her that should be put on the $5 bill and not the $100 bill. Yeah, so I'm pretty green about that. I just put on Facebook this idea of racial equality in Australia. It does not mean that we have handed the land back to the Aboriginals. It means that rich religious history buffs will enslave white people as well. Um, that's what it fucking means. And then they're saying it. They're going, history repeats itself. Oh yeah, that's true. That's wise. Oh, hey, this guy says history is written by the winners. Oh yeah, that's a good point. And then they go to church on the weekend and they just mash it all into, and thus God said. And so all of these you know, once you do drugs, that these descriptions of religious experiences, Nietzsche noticed and compared them to epileptic fits. People thinking they've encountered Christ. Well, no, uh, you know, you really are fucking yourselves, quite literally. Christian girls phonetically have the same tone when they're worshipping, singing worship songs as they do in bed. It's from fucking themselves.
So obviously, Roger Tall, as you spent a decade teaching me, don't be a patient, and then you moved to forcefully make me a patient. It obviously means that what your company taught me to call confidential information can't remain confidential unless I forfeit all my rights to a defense in the event of being challenged. So I'm obviously not doing that. Maybe it even fits with your Freudian psychology, like your religion chases after Jesus to kill him again and again and again because he's a stupid martyr. But like I was saying, the psychology or the inner mind of how to, by way of infiltration or discretion, get close enough to Jesus to, martyr him again and again, based on the story, would be the assuming of the mentality of a whore or a prostitute. And that's pretty much the best explanation I can think of for your composure. Fuck capital cameras. Amen.
So in sum, what you fucking morons get for your incestuous religion is that you prance about instinctively, sticking your nose in the business of people open to the flourishing of the bisexual community, sticking your nose in their business, figuring there's a fucking mystery. If you go to Calvary Hospital and a bisexual to report that you're suffering from pain, you'll be crash tackled to the ground, and they'll say that they think that you have the intention to harm yourself or someone else. And that's proportionate to the fact that they haven't acknowledged it's unscientific to be simultaneously believing that Jesus of Nazareth died for them as a gift to them, which is the concept of Calvary. It's that he went up the hill in a Mel Gibson feat of making you live for fucking ever. You selfish fucking unhippocratic piece of shit. That's the second blonde dumb cunt I've ever known, that doctor. I'm gonna have you pegged to the floor. Huh? I said I'm in pain. Yeah. So yeah, they go without stating directly that it's ridiculous to believe in inbreeding, calling it the image of God, going, oh, did a pedophile just emerge there? Oh, shit. At least he didn't go for his own direct bloodlines, right? That's the main thing there, is that right? And now we're so interested in psychomological studies, and they just will follow around bisexuals, going, oh fuck, what's wrong? Well, what's wrong is that you didn't acknowledge that it's more naturalistically plausible that Jesus was a first century bisexual, and that after being kidnapped by ransom and falsely indicted with the charge of thinking he was the king of the Jews, that he felt suicidal while walking up that hill, and that rather than it being a feat of making you live forever, fucking spastics, the most diseased minds that you can present on earth say wiser things than doctors at Calvary Hospital. Fucking inbred, fucking dumb slut. I could have fucked your mother in 30 seconds of talk. You fucking bitch. So they'll follow bisexuals around going, what's wrong? Can we write something? Can we say that this is wrong? Can we make it mysterious? And they have to make it real mysterious and untrue so that it fits with their religion. So then they commit fraud, they commit malpractice, and they do it all in good faith. Oh, but we were just trying to help. We were just trying to save. We were just trying to help and save it in good faith and money. And think about the money. Think about the money. Fucking 30 pieces of silver to come on your mother's tits. You blonde fucking Calvary Hospital, fucking cheap blonde mutt. It is a religion of dog shit. And look at what you come up with. Like that. Look at what ideas that you get for it. So, is it more plausible that Jesus he was a man? You said so, a mammal, an evolved from a mammal. And he had two legs. Are you sure he had two legs? Maybe he had one leg. Maybe he was an amputee. Is it more plausible that he was an amputee than that he turned water into wine, or that he rose from the dead 3 days after being killed, so that you could eat his body? And yet, it is a weird coincidence that the bisexual community are said to be disposed to more nervous breakdowns than any other demographic. Oh, and Jesus' love is spread out for everyone. But let's not ask what Jesus' sexual health identity was. And meanwhile, the bisexual is the only type of sexual health identity that can fuck every other one, or have a heart-to-heart relationship with every other kind of person. You know, if you're going to study these fucking logistics, do it fucking properly. P.S. That blonde doctor bitch at Calvary, you're a fucking cheap slut. Amen. Okay. And reflecting on my more recent material, I'm estimating, let's see, Roger Toller and Gary Cairns have been in the legal foul by way of empirical proof of response since the year 2017, when technically in about the year 2000, late 2010, they should have said, we made a move against you to try to put you onto the Mental Health Act while you were a contracted employee. We've tried to blame your mind on rock bands you've admired and artists that you've loved for the majority of your life. We've done this without telling you, so I have my ways of finding out. What they were supposed to say is, here are your legal contest rights. Do you wish to go to America and counter-sue? Yada, yada, yada. So he hasn't done that, nor has he personally stated the withdrawal and redaction of his little poofed profile. That's about him fingering his mum, probably. Roger, working for him, he drums you into a monist in very much in a way like a fundamentalist church leader. This is for you. But then he also does things like turns to the staff and says, "Oh, look, this Fess nasal spray, it's just saline, $15 for salt water. It's a bit steep, isn't it?" And this is calculated because it's supposed to cast the after shadow of morals behind sales, which is supposed to elevate, in principle, retail pharmacy above the duties of someone working in Coles or Woolworths or any sort of supermarket. So they're very monist, to the point where you could imagine them on certain days being driven to the point of wanting to convince a person that because Monday meant or reduced to one day, as in the first day, there's only really one day in a week and not 7, so you better buy this box of Nurofen today, our generic Capital Chemist brand of Nurofen. Or a schoolboy turning up saying, I missed an assessment class, I missed a period at school today, and then running and going, well, this is the pregnancy test that you need, while knowing that in saying he missed a period, he meant he missed a school class. That sort of get him. What he might try and do is say that what I've said about what he's taught me
is not only false but disrespectful to the mentally ill. He, in addition to being big on monism and false dichotomies, which is where you're given an either or choice, choose one or the other, but both of them are stupid. Like saying, look, either you refurbish my shop before close of business today, or tell me which one of your parents is a hermaphrodite. And you're like, huh? No. They're both wrong. No, it has to be one. It has to be one or the other. It has to be one or the other. It has to be one or the other. Anyway, that's where you can see him, as I said, approaching his telescope on our society, and pointing his bum up towards his god, his male god, and saying homosexuals are unnatural. Their responsibility comes from rebelling against their own sexuality. Yeah, so now obviously there is truth in making the statement to claim a given citizen, John or Jane Doe, is sick due to the hearing of voices is an unscientific statement in the event that it is not empirically demonstrable. Now, the way in which it's taken to be demonstrable is indistinguishable from the observation of deliberate or intentional role play, which is one reason why artists can be mistaken for see what these people know is like, okay, here's a valid scenario that's not the fault of a medical health practitioner at all. Let's say that a Christian mother and father have a daughter, and they've taught the daughter all about God, and that God is all powerful, controls everything, is almighty, can do anything. And then they've taught the daughter about the boogeyman. And like, well, we hope that the boogeyman doesn't scare you at night. Please tell us if the boogeyman scares you. But and then later on at other times they're saying, oh, God loves you, God bless you, and all this stuff. So what winds up happening is the daughter's still very young and completely dependent on the leadership and guidance of both parents, is having nightmares about being pursued by the all-powerful God after seeing car crashes on the news, or fires on the news, or people being injured on the news. And all the parents have to say is, oh, look, the boogeyman won't come after you, the boogeyman won't come after you. And the child doesn't know the tactical, verbal way to engage at that age their own parents and be like, no, it's not the boogeyman, it's just God. And so then the way it pans out, if they go to see, or at least actually no, in the sense that they probably would wind up talking to a religious psychiatrist too, then the religion doesn't get, they don't pull the religion up and go, whoa, this could totally account for why this child's hearing voices. She believes in an all-powerful God controlling everything because you told her that. Okay, well, yeah, but that's sort of what they do. And really, if hearing voices was a legitimate illness, voices that were foreign to a person's thinking, not able to be accounted for by surrounding persons or items or objects, televisions, stereos, radios, etc., would have to be able to be measured in the brain, independent of a person's own thinking patterns, and they'd have to be differentiated from a person's own conscious thought patterns. So much confusion is created by the fact that it gets drummed into everyone's heads at school that the scientific method involves observation. They don't say in biology we're studying cell division, and then tell you to draw a dividing line in chalk on the chalkboard, and using your brain cells and having faith. Like, you actually look under a microscope and watch fucking cells. So, Loving false dichotomies as he does. One moment. Yeah, loving false dichotomies as he does. You may now try one of his on sides and ask yourself, is it true that a citizen may be stated to be sick due to hearing voices, either both because of non-technological interference and or because due to technological interference? And is that a false dichotomy? You ask Gary Kanza and Roger Toll if that's a false dichotomy. Because their response will be something in concealing $3.8 billion per year. So, they essentially must power jot down notes, and which they then refer to as facts about a person. An AI-based sort of program will at a time be broadcast by electric shock, with an electric shock impact factor to it that's relative to factors like the physiology of the human person, the state of mind at the time, and someone like Rogers, crank of the lever. So it's to a person uneducated, the impact, they'll describe it and report it, and religious cops, religious psych people, religious doctors, people who pretty much sponsoring Roger and putting money in his Eden Monero cancer support group tin, will go, oh, they're delusional. All the principal philosophical truths about their own religion, incidentally, is the most that they'll be able to say. Why is it, for instance, now still more plausible to people, aside from the Queen's queefs, to think that an all-loving, all-powerful, and almighty God is more likely to exist than satellites that have developed the ideas of Niels Bohr, pioneered quantum mechanics in the 50s, so that they've gone beyond subatomic and can now interfere with minds. Objective is mind control, and the same software used in phone call impersonation can be used to create samples of the voices. They'll try and get samples generally of the voices of who they call handlers, which are people who kind of alpha male or dominated the person in social interaction. So what I'm sure psychiatrists in the federal government, whether complicit with Gary and Roger or not, will say is that certain patients that are said to be sick due to the hearing of voices are often reporting that they're hearing voices of people that person's known to them. Whereas from their end, by applying the voices of people who bullied them or ordered them around, they are gaining more control over the person's behavior. Now, the objective here is to lock them into a particular behavioral pattern that can be described in a summarial profile that they can then put forward and say, this is why we're essentially their indemnity, or that they rely on us because they have these deficiencies. It's like, well, you're the ones that scorched all the paranomasia out of their heads to carve the joke, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. That, well, as I've talked about, Gary and Roger being ass fuckers, I imagine them down underground, going for the backs of heads. Everything else, the hippocampus, amygdala, cerebellum, whatever. So if an electric shock administered by any of them were intense enough that, or the person had no idea this sort of technology existed, did not occur to them, they might have a dream of UFOs, they might go into cardiac arrest. In that event, a citizen's being killed, and a coroner will pronounce it as a death by way of a heart attack. And until coroners are given more precise, it's essentially whoever's got the thinner, whoever's radio waves are thinner is the winner, because the next kind of radar, if it's not as fine, like finitudial, it will just detect, oh, this person's brain seems to be irradiating in various parts, like maybe they've got cancer or something. And they won't be able to detect the research, and I think that this is strongly driven idealistically by culling, Freemason population culling views and values. It's interesting though, because the ones that they want to cull, it actually winds up being people that aren't particularly interested in pharmacy or healthcare. If you're interested in pharmacy or healthcare, there's potential for you supporting their interest in some way, and therefore them making a gain. If you were to speak out in protest, like Bertrand Russell in the 20s and 30s spoke out against the use of nuclear warheads. That's a religious hypocrisy there, where you find them in fundamentalist Christians too, where you go, well, why is it that you're saying that you're just culling off the weak because survival of the fittest is like something God said ought to be. It's not what was ever suggested by Charles Darwin to ought to be the way for humans. It was the way he was describing, and very much to his own despair. He was saddened by the amount of rivalry that went on amongst animals in the animal kingdom. So this survival of the fittest, taking it on board as a morally prescriptive axiom for how to view everyone else or devalue your view of anyone else, something that these Freemasons do. But you've got them on the question of, well, why is it that the ones that you are culling are the ones that don't share an interest in your line of profession? They want to do a different profession that's just not related to the trading of pharmaceutical drugs in any way. And then they'll be like, well, see, their religion sadly does share this incest origin story too. So yeah, what I've worked out is, because I mean, and granted, if you were to be in a philosophical debate and you were to sit a Freemason theologian down with a Christian theologian and me, and we were having a 3-person conversation, it would be seriously insisted upon by both the Mason and the Christian to me that the point, discussing the point of whether Jesus was Jesus Christ was the savior of the world, who died for the sins of the world, or a nutty religious martyr who been around in first century Palestine. If the technology was there for him to have a suicide vest, bomb, and a van, he would be the first to drive it into a wall near you, because he is a stupid martyr. The fact is that both mentalities engage with interacting with the concept of Jesus in some way that makes him archetypal to their treatment of others. And that winds up being marginalizing bisexuals in the case of both the Christians and the Masons. So my potential resolve to this was, well, what you haven't addressed then, as people who, like, how can you go one way and say, we think this person committed a dissociative incident at this location at this time under the influence of this drug that we don't sell and are completely opposed to and do not sell at all, and they was dissociative and did this, and this medicine will help for the rest of their life, and deep down it's conflicted sexuality. You know, the person's own mother won't approve of their own sexuality. They were born all this sort of talk can go on behind a person's back. Getting crossed, I think, is the term for it. And And yeah. So anyway, basically, the main reason that Capital Chemists have the shits at me, or the owners have the shits at me now, is because they made the mistake of thinking that I would want to murder with and for their company. I thought they were just teaching me things about. I've had to deal with being picked on for being someone who might grow into a prospective killer for the majority of my life by certain people. Um, some of which I would choose to keep in close quarters and try and understand how and why they were just determined to think this way. And in the end, I think it boiled down always to faith-based assumptions. But these assumptions were shared by both owners of the Chemist group, which was quite a pain for me. And by pain, I mean analgesia and not anal. Jesus, yeah, which is, I think, what Gary and Roger might be doing now, or last night when there was interference with me uploading one of my recordings. So, yeah, they have to estimate the strength in terms of electroshock intensity. And what they call the mental deterioration process is thoughts being ripped out of the person's head and studied by them. But then they'll try to use that data to represent the person's character in a certain way. But as in the process of having studied those paranamasia neural pathways, they've essentially ripped part of them, if not most of them, out of the person's head. And as a result of that, the person will no longer think in that particular pattern anymore. So when they get accosted and they try to say, well, we think you fit this sort of profile, by then they're already different and changed as a result of having been fucked with radios. And that's one reason I think these men are really too aggressed, repressed homosexuals. Their woof woof, we want Freemasonry to beat Christianity is so intensive in both their heads that despite knowing I'm an baptized antichrist, they wanted to represent me as a Christian just because they love competing against Christians so much. I'm like, shit, well, if anyone wanted to throw all of the integrity of their business's word onto the pile of healthcare, religious healthcare agencies are a direct necessary cause for the suffrage of noted in the bisexual rights movement, it would be Roger Tall and Gary Cairns of Capital Chemist. And they should really just ask fuck. They should ask fuck daily. They should ask fuck nightly. Yeah, so very dangerous. Who gets the best raid? And then you got questions like, how do they get the better radios? And you can go, well, Islamic terrorists are portrayed on the TV as being like wearing wrapped up towels and holding machine guns, but really they're scientists, pioneered a lot of advances before Western scientists. Algebra was a Muslim that wrote the mathematical language of algebra that we're taught in school, and there's quantum algebra. There's Sharia law courts in the United Kingdom. So if all that had to be done was that the shipment of technology be stamped and marked confidential property from the United Kingdom, it would be assumed like sealed by royalty and not to be questioned, and then it could be that finer pointed radar. Then you have the matter of whether certain places can't be thoroughly inspected because you have like land rights and people who own chunks of land. If they don't live on it, and buildings are built on it, the value and the money they make increases. But imagine that they made a lake or lakes with their land, some of their land. Time could pass that it no longer even gets legally recognized as land. And then if they tunnel in under that, under a man-made lake in Canberra, as if when mining for opal or rich, valuable minerals, then from a place like that they could establish placing radios with which they can begin to fuck with brains. The radios do more damage than every substance combined. I personally know from experience and from the admitted word of professionals that all of the illicit drugs are better for you than cigarettes and alcohol. But these radios of theirs are even worse. Yeah, they're worse than being scarred with a blade. And this is what they taught me. This is what they wanted me to do for them, ultimately. But when I worked out that their battery was the bisexual rights movement, I was like, what? Actually, I personally happen to think that bisexuals are more natural than heterosexuals. Marriage was invented by religious people. Anyway, so obviously, and since it also means they were guilty of tremendous false advertising in terms of ethics concerned with the supply of pharmaceuticals and how and why you would want to. And I just thought, no. So plus they have tactical advantages whereby if they make mistakes and damage heads various ways, there's no accountability for them unless they are found and identified. Obviously, if they've tunneled under a man-made lake and have settled, then they'd have to have the access points, probably even access points by cars. So like if there was a basement to Ridge's Lakeside, for instance, the Ridge's Lakeside building, and so you turn up and show a Freemason card and be like, I need to go to the basement. And they go, ah, yes, the basement. And they go up in the door, and then they drive through, and then they're sitting down watching people fuck through the eyes, the neural pathways from the back of the retina and eyeballs of other citizens. They can look through your eyes while you're fucking a partner or being fucked by a partner in a bed. They can look through the eyes of the partner fucking you or that you're fucking in a bed. The Doppler effect applies to every sort of wave. Light waves, sound waves, heat waves, brain waves.